introduce James. James Baduor is a product designer at Mintlify. With a strong background in both design and Webflow development, James has demonstrated a keen ability to create innovative and user-centric solutions. He's a founder of ADP List and has played a pivotal role in fostering a community of designers and developers. Known for his commitment to excellence, James seamlessly integrates his design skills with a deep understanding of Webflow development, ensuring that the products not only look visually appealing, but also function smoothly. Welcome, James.
Thank you. Cool. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Great. Happy to be here. Thanks for the intro, Gil, and thanks for the invite. Really honored to be here to share my knowledge with everybody. So as you said, I'm a product designer. I started my career some time back, originally from a health background, then transitioned into design. And most of my early career was spent teaching design. And so everything I'm teaching you here, I learned through teaching others. So I believe most of you would probably, if very keen, would also build your careers in design by teaching others. I have some experience in front-end development and also local development. And yeah, all of these things add up to everything that I know today and then the impact and value I'm able to create for the companies I work with. So I'm going to jump right in to what we are going to study with my time here. And then we can talk about a few things. They leave here today with something to be proud about. So this is going to touch a lot more on practical design. And so when I say practical design, what I'm trying to talk about is being able to actually think and implement your ideas visually. And so I think one of the challenges most people have when they have ideas is actually visualizing those ideas and making it real. And so I am one of those people that believe that, look, if you have an idea, the hardest thing that can happen to you if you have an idea is, or the most difficult thing, and unfortunate thing that can happen to you is not being able to visualize those ideas and then present those ideas to people to actually appreciate it. And that is where design comes in. And so when you look at the whole product innovation cycle, right, there is the idea stage, there is the design or prototyping stage, and then there is the implementation stage, which I believe most people in the engineering area focus on the implementation stage. And so when it comes to the design stage, that is where most designers fall. And so the design stage basically covers a lot of things like the wireframing, the prototyping, the UI design, and whatever you can think about. In this class, we are mostly going to focus on the visual stage or the design stage, where you should be able to either get your own ideas or ideas from other people, and then being able to paint it in a way that people can actually appreciate what you are thinking about. And so we are going to have 7 modules. The first one is today. Today we are going to focus on what design is, careers you can have in design, and then everything visual design in general. The second one is going to talk about design thinking a bit, but that is going to be mostly a take-home assignment or research work that we will do. And then the module 3 to 6 will focus on hardcore UX design, where we are going to be in Figma all the time, designing interface, designing icons, and all of those things. And by the time we finish this course, you would leave here with a tangible project, which is like designing a blog post for women who code. And then the final session will be an EMA session. So after the lesson, if you have questions to ask me, you can basically ask me those questions. And then also I would do my best to share more resources that could help you going forward. So yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to just drop it in the chat. I'll be checking the chat as I go through today's lesson, and then also I'll be asking a few questions. So feel free to unmute. Ofi, can they talk back?
Yes, I would allow that setting now.
Okay, cool. So yeah, there are going to be cases where I would ask a few questions, and if you want to talk, you can just join the call and talk. So let's jump right in. Now, as I said, we'll be doing a lot of things in Figma. So I believe everybody here knows about Figma and then knows, at least has Figma on their laptops. Do you? If you don't have Figma, just go to figma.com, just figma.com, figma.com, and then you can either use it online or you can download the Figma app. So in this case, I'm actually using the web version, which is quite easy to use. And so, yeah, great. Somebody has Figma. So we'll be doing a lot of things in Figma today. Literally everything you're doing is going to happen in Figma. And so that you feel at home with what we are trying to talk about. Now, for today's lesson, we'll just be covering a few, like I would say, theoretical stuff, which is like the design process, UX careers, what are UX deliverables, UI design, the laws of UX, and then what is Figma in general and how we use Figma. And when it comes to the deliverables, I'll be focusing mainly on these four here. So wireframe, style guide, high fidelity UI, and then prototypes. So, good. Everything around us is design. And the reason why I say this is you realize that everything you use, whether your pen, your books, your laptops, your chairs, everything that you basically interact with in your environment has some form of design element in it. And so you have to think about how important design is to our society and how we live, right? Now, imagine you are sitting on your chair, right? And your chair has only one leg, right? And then a very big seat area, which is unstable. You realize that when you sit on the chair, it just falls. You probably end up hurting yourself, right? Why would that happen? People will say, okay, this is poorly designed. This is poorly engineered. They didn't think about us before building this chair, right? So that gives us the answers the essential question of why do we actually do design or why design is important. So design is important to basically help us create things that are accessible and usable, right? So imagine using your chair and then it's very usable. You realize that it saves you a lot in terms of health, right? Your posture, because if a chair is well designed, it has health benefits to you, right? If you are using your pen, it feels very well, it's very sleek and then easy for you to write. That is well thought design. So you realize that design isn't so much limited to the digital products that we use. Design is literally everything that we have around us, right? So think design engineering. Your body as a human being, you realize that everything has an intention to it. Everything that you do, your fingers are such a way that they help you achieve the purpose that you need to achieve. That's the whole idea behind design and design process. So when you see a designer or when you think about the design process, the idea is that how do you build, visualize, think, and then implement things that at the end of the day, users can be able to use this to achieve a specific goal. And so if you do anything that at the end of the day, users cannot use it to achieve the defined purpose or goal, that is extremely bad design, right? So bringing us back to the design process, there are a lot of stages of design process, but then this is like the simplest version you can get. Again, the good thing about design is it really depends on, again, there is a general process that guides how certain things are done, but then it mostly depends on how you want to optimize that process to fit into your workflow. There are people that have 6-stage design processes. There are those that have 3 stages. There are those that have 5 stages, right? Again, all of these people optimize the process to fit their workflow. Maybe for you as a designer, you do not necessarily to do research. You do not necessarily need to think about ideas. Somebody does that for you. So for your design process, it mostly revolves around wireframing and then doing high fidelity design. Somebody's design process is also involves more of thinking and then talking to users. So that's where the UX researchers lie, right? So you realize that the design process is a non-linear process. It's like very flexible, webby process where everybody has their role to play in this process. And you find people who actually do everything in this process. So these are like, let me say, full scope designers who basically do the research, they do the ideation, they do the analysis, they do the design and even test to users. And there are those who focus on specific things. We will talk more about the UX careers, but then that's generally design and then the design process. Now, what is user experience? I already explained that, look, if you are designing something or you are building an artifact or building a project or anything, the purpose of this project is to help users achieve that. And so if you build that solution and then users do not get the desired response or desired goal, you are literally failing at user experience. Now, user experience is not just about design, it's about empathizing, thinking, ideating, doing your research, talking to users, doing the design UI, and then also implementing it and then testing it with users to make sure that it meets the purpose that you are building it for. And so most people usually see, when you see Facebook, Instagram, and all of those apps, right? Even as a developer, and most of the time you think mostly about the interface where you are able to interact with, right? But then a lot of people do not think about what goes into the implementation itself, right? Most customers only interact with the interface that they have. They don't know what goes on in the back end. They don't know the business logics that are run. They don't know what goes into building the front end, accessibility considerations, and all of those things, right? These are things that as a UX designer, you need to think about and then make sure they are in place for your users to get a desired outcome. And so this is basically the elements of user experience when you talk about user experience. The first one that most people see is really the surface design. The first one is really the surface design, which is what customers interact with, right? So that's mostly the end result. So even if you're building a web app, right, nobody sees the backend code. Most people see that, okay, I click a function, I click a button, and then a function runs, and then it shows me a pop-up somewhere or something happens, right? Nobody really thinks about what happens at the background. So that's the surface design that most customers interact with. The second one has to do with the skeleton. When we talk about the skeleton, we are literally talking about, let's say, the wireframe, the layout, and all of those stuff, right? The navigation design. These are the things that guide the users to reach where they need to reach. So if you build an app and the navigation is bad, for instance, people need to reach you for support. And on the menu, there is nothing for support, right? How are they going to reach you for support? That is very bad design. It means that you failed at building your skeleton. The next one has to do with the structure, which is where a lot more goes into about how the logic works, how users are interacting. When you probably hear things like user flows, user journey map, and all of those stuff, right? The goal of this structure design is to help map out the user journey, how the user is thinking. These things are more psychological. When a user lands on your homepage or your landing page of your website, how do they interact with the website? You know that the first thing users probably do is see the hero page and then they scroll through the website. And so this is where the thought of the interaction of the your product goes into. Then we go to things like the scope, which is like the functional requirements, where the idea is coming from, how we are going to implement those things. Then the strategy side of things, how we are going to market the design that we are going to build, and like what is our goal for building this, right? And so these are the bases that form a good product design process or user experience. These are the elements of user experience. And so if you do not consider all of these things when you are designing a product, it becomes a very bad experience for users, because again, it feels like you've not put in thoughts and considerations into whatever you are building. And so as a designer or as a user experience designer, this is the basis. Think of this as the formula for everything that you do going forward, whether you're designing a website, a mobile app, whatever you're doing. This process or these elements should guide you into how you basically deliver your product. Now, if you have questions, feel free to drop it here. We'll be over with the boring stuff very soon. UX deliverables. So there are so many ways to deliver design, right? So for instance, when you think about deliverables for a front-end developer, you're thinking about maybe a web application interface, maybe a mobile app interface, or maybe some HTML code that can be run in the browser. So those are some of the deliverables that you have as a front-end engineer. When you come to design, there are deliverables that you basically have for design. And again, not everything is very important for you to deliver. For instance, there are a lot of designers that do not prototype because at the end of the day, the interface is good enough for the engineers to implement, right? There are lots of designers that do not do personas, right? Again, it depends on the context to which you are delivering your design. And so these are some of the common deliverables that UX people are required to provide. You do not necessarily need to provide everything, but this just shows you a percentage of what designers often deliver to businesses. And the top three ones are, let me say top four ones are wireframes, prototypes, flowcharts, and then sitemaps. So I believe we all know about sitemaps. So they just show how the navigation works. Flowcharts are usually used to communicate the user journey and user flows and all of those stuff. Prototypes are more interactive for testing with users. And then wireframes just give you a structural overview of how the product is going to look and work. And so these are the top deliverables. And yeah, so these are some of the deliverables. So if you're a designer in a team and you need to basically provide certain deliverables to your team members, this is the division. So interactive prototypes are used by both developers, managers, or external clients. So you can just give these prototypes to them, and then you can interact with it and see what you're offering them. You can give wireframes and wireframes to developers, and then they can understand how it works, and then it just follows that trend. Now, one very important thing about UX design is the laws of UX, and we'll just go through a few, but I believe this is something you can take home and learn on your own. Just get an idea of how things work. And these rules are very important for everybody, developers and designers alike. So these rules basically guide how you do design and think about how systems work. Now, let's just go through a few, and I would give some examples, and then probably it could help you understand how these things work. The first one is a static usability effect. Imagine going to a website that has raw HTML, no CSS, nothing, right? The first thought that comes to your mind is that this website is broken, right? You see the links as raw links. You see, let's say, image tags without any image, nothing. The first thing that comes into mind is that the website is broken. Why so? Because psychologically you perceive that, look, if something works, it should automatically look good, bare minimum, right? And so that is why we have HTML and CSS, which gives more design usability effects to the HTML that is written. And so this rule is extremely important. And there are most people that, again, in startups, most people think that, okay, because we are bootstrapping, we are just doing something, the UI doesn't matter. But then actually to customers, the UI matters a lot. If your UI is not good, people assume that your product is broken or doesn't work. And you can see why companies like Facebook, Airbnb, Instagram, and the rest are very well loved, because they have very good interactions, UIs, and all of those stuff. Now, the second one I would like to touch on is the Fitts law, which is, I'm going to focus on the most popular ones anyway, because the rest are not very much used and they might not necessarily apply in our case here. The second one I'll touch on is Fitts law. So the time to acquire a target is a function of the distance to and the size of the target. Now, imagine you on your phone, right? You want to, let's say, sign up for or buy something. And then in doing that, the buy button is extremely small. You have to be careful when clicking on a button, right? How would you feel about this experience, right? This literally breaks the whole experience for you. You don't find it very pleasant because, again, they have not put into consideration this Fitts law, which makes it possible for people to easily acquire or reach their targets. Again, another example is you visit a website, an e-commerce website, and then the quantity is 0, but then the plus and minus by the quantity are very small, and you have to be careful when you are or are close together, and you have to be careful when you're clicking a plus or minus, right? And all the time you end up clicking minus and it takes items off your cart and stuff like that. It becomes a very frustrating experience, and that is because they've not put into consideration this particular Fitts law. The next one I'll look at is Hicks law, which says the time it takes to make a decision increases with the number and complexity of choices. Now, I'm sure we all relate to this, right? If you have 10 very, very beautiful dresses and you need to go to a party, it becomes difficult for you to choose because right now you have 10 very beautiful dresses. Yes, I'm going to share the website with you. So I'll share this first model with you. So you have everything in here. Let me just share this. Okay, cool. So I'll just share this with you here in the chat and then in the group as well. Yeah. Great. So imagine you have 4 dresses, very beautiful dresses. It becomes very difficult for you to make a decision because again, the choices are so many, and then it's even more complex because all of them are very beautiful dresses, right? That is where the Hicks law applies. And so when you go to websites, you realize that most websites keep their navigation to options or navigations and stuff to 4 to 6, 7 elements so that it's easy for the user to make decisions, navigate, and all of those stuff, right? Again, if you're building a product or you're designing a product, just make sure that you limit the amount of options required or the users need to go through before they make a decision, right? Limiting this basically helps the users psychologically easily find the needs that they have. Now, the next one is, let's see, law of proximity. I think this is self-explanatory. Imagine on your mobile phone. So let me take my mobile phone, for instance, and let's see. Let's say my mobile phone, and I'm on Twitter, right? So if you're on Twitter and then you are a right-handed person, you hold your phone like this, right? Mostly you're on your phone right-handed. Look at where this button is, the plus tweet button, and then the navigation here, right? Now, do you think there is a reason why they put the navigation at the bottom? Yes, there is a reason. Why? Because of this law of proximity. Because your hands are towards the bottom of the phone, and so it's easy for your fingers to reach these menu items here, rather than imagine the most used menus are on the top. All the time you have to hold the phone with one hand, then use the other hand to basically click the icons on the top. And so that is the reason why we have most of these laws. And so you are beginning to realize that some of these decisions that are made on mobile apps or products that you use are based on some of these UX laws, right? I've seen a comment, most users are right-handed. Yes. Most products are designed for right-handed people, but then again, you need to think about everybody. That is where accessibility design comes into play. So that's the law of proximity. Let's see. So the law of similarity as well. Let's see if I can get an example. So this is an example here, right? Law of similarity. Now, if you look at this precisely, you realize that text is grouped together, icons are grouped together. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. You realize that text is grouped together, right? Icons are grouped together. Then there is the image, and then there is this, right? So what is this law is saying? The human eye tends to perceive similar elements in a design as a complete picture, shape, or group, even if those elements are separated, right? And so if you see text together or you see certain things together, the human mind already programmed those things in such a way that it groups those things together so it can easily understand how the page is structured. And so, for instance, when you look at this page, when you look at the micro UI here, right? So the basic versions of the UI, you have text, you have space, you have text, you have a background rectangle, you have an icon, then you have an image, right? Now you realize that all of these things are very separate stuff, right? But then they are grouped together so that it's easy for you to basically cognitively like understand what is going on here. Then all of them form a whole. They form a block, right? An article item. So when you look at this, right, you realize that there is text block, then there is this whole block, then there is the image, right? Now, all of these things form this article block. Let's see, where is it? Good. So you realize that all of those things form a single, right, a blog post or article. And then when you scroll to the page, your mind now groups all of these things as a group. So even though they are different objects, the way they are arranged, your mind forms this basis that, oh, this is an article. So it groups everything. So you realize that there are so many elements, but then in your mind, all you are seeing is one article with enough information or various information like the title and all of those stuff. Then you go to the next article, then you go to the next. So this rule here, basically what it's telling you is that the mind perceives these similar elements as a group, right? That is how come this is the trick that people use to design grid elements, flex boxes, groups of options or features and all of those stuff, right? Even on this UX picture here, right? You realize that these are different elements. We have an image, we have a text and a description and even a background. But then in your mind, all of these things are separate elements grouped together, right? So they form the grid that you are seeing. So understanding these things really help you to design experiences that can be acceptable by the human mind and then the eyes. What again? Let's see. Okay. So I think what's going to be helpful is this website basically gives you everything. It's going to give you more detailed information on the various rules, how they work, various takeaways, where it's originating. And if you want to further read about all of these things, you have all of this information here. So I think I would encourage you guys to basically bookmark this website, use this as a reference when you're building any software, when you're talking to people, whatever you're doing, just try to reference this particular website, because like, trust me, like I don't have everything in my head, but the constant coming back and applying all of these rules is what people use in building experiences that would basically help you become that really good and conscious designer that you want to be. And so, yeah, I would encourage you to bookmark this site and then just read more about it. You don't need to keep everything in your head, and just understand a few things and how they work, especially the ones that I explained. Those are the most common used ones, and then you should be good to go. Great. So now that is basically an overview of what design is, and then what the importance of design, and how we can apply certain things in design, how we can design for accessibility and all of those things. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is UX careers. So when people think about design, they basically think about, oh, this guy is a product designer, so he designs web apps and all of those stuff. Or this guy is a fashion designer, this guy designs this and that, right? Now, this in specific, UX is what I'm talking about here is what I'm going to be talking about is limited to digital product design. There is UX for furniture, there is UX for interior design and all of those stuff. But we are going to mainly focus on digital product UX. Now, whilst I was going through the various deliverables and stuff, right, you realize that a lot of things are grouped in a certain way, where you realize to see functions, specific specializations come about. Now, the most common UX career that people know is UX UI design. So UX UI design, it's like, okay, a designer that does research and then basically speaks to users, gets the information they need, and then they use that information to design interfaces for people to use, right? So that's the UX designer. Then there is the UI designer. So the UI designer is one designer who the UI designer is the designer basically who does most of these visual elements that you see. So they take the research, they take everything, they combine it with the laws of UX and psychology and all of those stuff, and they use it to design experiences that you can see visually and maybe interact with them. Now, UX and UI, you hear people saying UX, UI, and all of those stuff. UI is mostly a subset of UX, but the reason why people say UX, UI is, I believe that they want to emphasize that UX does not stand alone because it's so popular. UI does not stand alone because it's so popular. And then also UX is really not just about the experience, but then you can also be a UX designer who designs interfaces, right? And then there is also the visual designer who focuses on the visual elements like illustrations, animations, and all of those stuff. And then there is the interaction designer. So the interaction designer designs the flows and makes it easy for you to understand like how the process works, the logic, and all of those stuff. And then there is a UX researcher. So if you're somebody who loves to speak to users, loves to strategize, loves to do deep thinking, empathize with users, you probably fall in the UX researcher department. And there are many UX roles that you can, career roles that you can basically think about. The good thing is the world is the standards are high. People are becoming more intelligent about these products and experiences, and so okay. So there is the world, people are becoming more smarter about experiences. And so the world is beginning to basically appreciate what design can offer. It used to be, there was a time when like people didn't understand the impact of design, people didn't understand how design can help their businesses. But when you realize now that the biggest companies are championing design, design is becoming extremely popular. There are lots of people entering design now. Designers are, again, if you are somebody who loves a lot of money, designers are being paid a lot of money. And so there is like a lot of opportunity for people to actually get into design right now. I think my advice for people is don't get into design for the wrong reasons, which is mainly money. Get into design because you want to design experiences or want to leave a legacy or want to make an impact in the design world. So that's basic what I can say about the UX careers. We already talked about the loss of UX, and then we also talked about UI design. Now, let's talk about Figma. But before we go there, I want to answer this question. When you build a design for a website and the clients have a lot floating images, busy background, overlapping columns, rows, do you advise the clients that this is not the best approach or creating the design anyway? Okay, so I think, again, like, just think about the medical profession for a moment. When you go to the hospital, right, you are going to the hospital because you have a problem, you trust that the medical doctor knows what they're about, they are experts, and then they know how to help you. You don't tell the doctor to give you drug A, B, C, D, or diagnose you in a certain way, or anything, right? You trust the doctor to make the decisions and then give you the drugs, and you listen to them to come for to get better, right? It's the same thing with design. Now, before somebody approaches you for design, it's assumed and should be respected that they believe that you know what you are doing. You are the expert in this place, right? And so that is why they are coming to you for your help. And so it's your duty as a designer to, first of all, help these clients understand why design matters, right? Why certain things cannot be done a certain way. So it's in your position as whoever you are, as a designer or a consultant, to advise them, educate them on why certain things don't work. Again, this is where the laws of UX come to play. Then you also basically propose solutions to them. So in proposing those solutions to them, that is where you come up with your designs, which should be very accessible, very easy to use, simple, that would help their businesses achieve their goals. So in short, you don't just do whatever your client says. Otherwise, they could just use some random software somewhere to achieve that goal. You do and recommend and propose to them what you think is the best approach to take as a designer. Does that answer your question, Maria?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing the knowledge. I totally agree with you, and I just wanted to hear your point as you're very experienced, and it was very curious for me. Thank you.
Welcome. Cool. Okay, cool. So I believe by now everybody has Figma. So I want to directly just jump right away into Figma. Let's do a few things before this lesson is over. So I'm going to basically introduce you to the Figma interface. So if you have your Figma, just open the Figma and then you can just follow along whilst I take you through the Figma interface. We are going to learn how to use the basic tools of Figma, just get ourselves acquainted so that next time when we are on the call, it's going to be a practical design session, and then everybody can directly start contributing. Is that okay with everybody? Just drop an emoji in the chat if you have Figma. Nice. Okay. Okay, cool. So I see a lot of people have Figma. If you don't have Figma, just go to figma.com and download Figma. Cool. Janir, is that the spelling? Do you want to talk? Your hands are up. Okay, cool. So this is the Figma interface, right? And as you may know, most of the great products that you see and use have been designed in Figma. And you'll be wondering, how is this black or white empty canvas the tool that is used to design products that I use? And that is basically the question we are coming to answer here. Figma is, I think, one of the design interface tools of choice. And so, okay, sure. And it has a lot of capabilities that you can basically use to achieve anything, almost anything product design right now. Figma has simple tools. I believe, in my perspective, it's one of the easiest tools to use. We are going to look at the basic tools and do a few basic things. And then we can go to the hardcore stuff the next time we meet. I'm going to start with the interface. So the first thing you see up here is this top bar, right? So on the left, you have the Figma logo with this drop down here. Now, this is where you are basically going to see everything menu related, right? So think of the high level menu stuff. So if you want to create a new Figma file, import a file, all of those things, you can do that here. The edit function. So if you use a text editor before, you know what edit functions do. The view functions, we don't have to go through all of this right now. Just know that when you click here, you have a lot of things you can basically use in Figma, right? Now, the next thing has to do with the selecting tools, right? So there are basically two types of selecting tools here. I'm going to show you how they work. So let me just quickly do. Great. So we have rectangle lefts. So let's say we have this, and then we have this. Good. Now, there are two types of selection tools, right? By default, you have this selection tool here, which is the move tool, and then we have the scale tool. What does the move tool do? Basically helps you to move items on the canvas. So this area here is the canvas. And so when anybody says drop an item on the Figma canvas, what they are basically saying is drop something in this empty space, which is the canvas. It's very huge. So you can zoom in and zoom out however you like with your scroller, your mouse, or your trackpad. And so the move tool allows you to move any object or select objects on the screen and move them. That's basically what it does. It also allows you to basically play with the various points, right? The corner points here. You can do anything you want with this particular move tool here. And you probably 90% of the time be using the move tool. The scale tool, so as the name suggests, it helps you scale, right, proportionally. So that's what a scale tool does. It helps you scale by keeping the proportions of this object, and then you just scale them. So think of this as, let's say, a CSS scale, where you scale by width and height, Y and X and Y axis. So basically, that's what a scale tool does. Then we have this here, which is the frame tool. Now, there are three different types, but we are going to mostly focus on the frame. Now, the frame tool allows you to design frames. So, for instance, we are designing a mobile app. How do we know the screen of the mobile app, which screen of the mobile app to use, right? You basically use the frame tool. Now, you realize that for any tool that you select, right, there are options on the right for you to choose from. So, most of your workflow is going to be select a tool on the left and then choose an option on the right. So for instance, you want to design an app for an iPhone 15 Pro, right? When we select the frame tool, it gives us the option to choose an app frame. So let's say I want to design an app for iPhone 15 Pro. All I need to do is select this, and then I get the frame for an iPhone 15 Pro, right? So that's what the frame tool does. And then when I select this, I can just start dropping in my rectangles, however I want them to display here, and then I'm good to go. So that's how it works. So that's the frame tool. Then these shape tools, right? Now, almost every UI contains these basic elements, literally everything, almost everything in design, right? So if you see a complex UI, a complex interface with weird elements on it, all of them are usually designed with any of these tools. So you have the rectangle tool, which I used for this. You have the line, which is, this is a line, so you can just have a line. You can move it with the move tool. We'll see how to use, or cases where we'll use lines later. You have the arrow. I barely use this, but yeah, it's also there. You have the ellipse. So again, we have an ellipse. So again, if you want to design something using an ellipse, let's say you want to design a face, an emoji or something. Again, most emojis are circular like this. Then we want to design the eye. We do something like this, right? And then again, we do something like this. That's a nice emoji. And so again, you can use these shapes for anything. Really, it's really about your imagination. Okay. Now, the next thing is the polygon tool. So for instance, someone asks you, I want to design a hexagon, or let's say an octagon. So you have this polygon tool that allows you to basically design as many shapes as you want. And so an octagon is 8, right? So we have something like this, an octagon. You can drag to reduce the number of shapes. It can give you a square, pentagon, and all of those stuff, right? Hexagon. And so that's what the polygon tool does. We'll come to this, probably use this later. And then we have another very important one, the image tool. So the image tool allows you to basically select images onto the Figma canvas, right? So something like this, the image tool allows you to do that. There are various ways you can add an image to the interface, but then this is just a basic way to do so. And then we have the pen tool, as the name suggests, it's a pen tool that allows you to draw complex shapes, like something like this. And then you have options on the right to use for this. And then we have the pencil, works like the pen tool, but more free form. And then we have the text tool. So how do you add text to your buttons and all of this stuff? Simply just select the text tool, type, click on the page, start typing. So this is text. So that's how the text tool works. So you can use this to add text on your page. So really, like, the Figma is very, very simple and easy to use once you understand the basics of how these tools work, right? Most of the time, you're just going to be using these tools here. Okay, so just learn how to play with some of these tools when you, after this lesson, just spend like 30 minutes just going through the Figma interface, playing with these tools. You can create custom shapes like this, like an emoji face, play with the colors, stuff like that. So that's how the various tools here work. At the middle here, we have the name of the file. So again, very simple, just click here and it allows you to change the name. You can change it to anything you like. And also, again, Control Z, undo all also works in here. So you can use that. And then on the right side, you have the multiplayer tools, which is you can see the people that are on the Figma file. So one very great thing about Figma is multiple people can basically work on one file. multiple people can work on one file, and you can see all of them here. And then you can also share your file. So if, let's say, you are designing for a company, and then you need to basically deliver the designs to them, you are basically going to be able to share that link for them to be able to see your design. Guys, just a moment. Let me switch on the slide. Okay, cool. So you can share your designs to people so they can actually see the designs that you have. The other ones are not very important. We'll look at them later. On the left here, so let me answer this question first before we continue. Is Figma the best tool to start a beginner UX designer career as beginner UX designer? Well, everything I share on this call or in this group session is a personal opinion. And my answer is actually yes. Actually, the only tool you should be using right now. Why am I saying so? Figma is literally the tool almost every company uses. It's all over the place. And if everybody is drinking water, or everybody recognizes that water is the best ingredient to make tea, right? Why would you go use petrol or gas, right? And so it's highly recommended by industry leaders to basically use Figma. And there are so many benefits to using Figma. As I said, multiplayer, you can work along with your teammates directly in one file. Figma has a lot of plugins and tools you can use. Figma, it's very easy to use. The prototyping tools are amazing, like on the top. And so, yeah, and it's free. And so, why would you use Figma? I think Figma is an amazing tool. And another thing, I'm biased because I'm a Figma ambassador. I used to be a Figma ambassador. So, yeah, I hope I answered your question. Okay, exactly. They have great documentations and right. Okay, cool, guys. Yeah, keep the questions coming. Now, the next thing we are going to look at is the left panel. Now, when you are working on Figma, okay, there are two things you definitely be using. The pages and then the layers, okay. The pages just think of them as pages of a book, right? So when you open a book, okay, you have like paragraphs on a page, then you open another page, you have paragraphs there and stuff like that. So just think of them as standard pages where each page has information that you have. So you see that the first page, which is model 1, contains a lesson overview and all of this information. The next page, which is the Figma interface, contains these elements. So pages allows you to organize your designs in a specific way. So you realize that by default, Figma just names the elements you select and then gives them a number. It's a very good practice to label these layers. And so you can call these red rectangle, something like this. And then we can call this yellow rectangle. And the more complex your UI becomes, the easier it is for you to basically know where to find objects and stuff. So that's the layers panel. We'll learn more about this as we design. So yeah, if you don't understand something, don't be scared. You'll get to know this very soon. Now, as I said, for every element that you select on the page, right, the right panel gives you options that you can use to modify this, and this is the right panel. So for this element, let me just bring this here, isolate this guy. Oh, no. Okay. Yeah. What's happening? yeah, for this guy, wow. Okay, for this guy here, basically, you select this layer here, which is a rectangle. You have options to modify this rectangle. Now we have the X and Y axis, which helps you define the position of this object. So you realize that when I move this, just look here, right? When you look here, when I move this, the values change because it's basically defining the position of this element on the canvas here. So just think of this, let's say, as a web page, right? You are positioning the object on the top left here, so it gives you an X and Y axis that you can use. Then we have the width and height. So you can change the width anyhow you want, 100, however you want to change it. You can also just drag and then to expand the width for you. Then we have the angle. So this helps you rotate the object as you change. It just helps you rotate. And then we have the corner radius, which we'll be using a lot. So the corner radius also helps you change the corner radius of the object here. So the higher, the more circular the corners become. So you see how these things become more practical whilst we are going through the next thing. And then there are the others, but I'll jump to this, which is the fill. So the fill basically means that the color of this object. And so you can just change it anyhow you want, or you can select the colors on the document you want, however you want to select the colors. There are various color options that you can basically use. We have the hex color, which is quite popular, right? We have the RGB, which is, again, also quite popular, very popular for digital screens. We have the CSS colors. So if you are somebody who maybe prefer to use CSS colors, you can use that. We have the HSL and then the HSB. Most of the time, it's usually on hex, or I prefer to use HSL. But yeah, you have the color options here. And you have this color area where you can select the color however you want it. And this is, there are also various options for you to select which color mode to use or how you want to define your colors. You have the solid color, which is this. You have the gradient, so you applies a gradient. And realize that depending on the options you choose, right, it gives you more options that you can basically work with. So the gradient allows you to decide the direction and stuff like that. This helps you create really nice UIs. We have, again, you can use an image or a video. So it really depends on how you want to design the interface or what your expectations are. Then, yeah, aside the fill, we have the stroke, which is basically the outline around the object. So this is how the stroke works. You can decide where the stroke is, center, inside, however you want to define it, the stroke weight, the color of the stroke, however you want to decide it, and you should be good to go. Now, these are things we'll be using throughout the lesson as we are designing our interface and making sure we are designing experiences that work for people. So I think we've probably mostly covered most part of Figma, what is relevant for now. One thing I encourage you guys to do is when you have some time, just open Figma, try to play with stuff, try to imagine. So just think of this as your first color book or a white designed canvas that has been given to you. And so think about when you were in kindergarten or primary school, the shapes you've been designing and stuff, right? So let's say when your teacher asks you to design, draw a house, right? What constitutes a house? The first thing I think about a house is this, let's say something like this, right? For those of you who come from, those of you from I'll probably say Africa, you know that most of the houses look something like this. So they look something like this, right? So we have this, let's say this white house. Then we have, and you just imagine how the shapes are being used, right? square, rectangle. So let's say this is the gate, the door of the house. And then we take another rectangle. We say this is the window. Let's say the window is black. We do this, and I'll show you how I'm duplicating all of these things, okay? So let's say our house has a big door. Let's say we are rich, so we have a two-way door house, very nice one. And then the roof, we say, okay, the roof is usually a triangle. So we do something like this, right? Then we have a house, right? So everything is literally your imagination. Everything design that you see on the web is literally just rectangles, triangles, circles, squares, and all of those stuff, right? Now, let's say you want to design, let's say you're designing a website or you're building a mobile app and they ask you to design a search icon, okay? What you are going to do is, we know that search is circular. And so we are going to say something like this, and then let's design the handle. So we have something like this, okay? Then we say, okay, let's have some space in the middle. So we have something like this, right? And then let's say we want to make our search a bit fancy, then we have something like this. As simple as that. You realize that we have a search icon, you see? So this is how the experts that are designing and using those things, this is how they literally design all the elements that you use for the mobile apps and all of those stuff. So we are going to learn how to do some of these things, how we design the search icon, why we are designing it this way, what are the other options for us to design production ready icons, and all of those things are going to be coming up as we go forward with our lesson. So yeah, I think I'm going to pause here, and before I open up for questions about what we just learned, I want to show you a few things that you can basically, places where you can basically go for, where we'll be going for inspirations while we design. Now, the first place is mobile.design. So mobile.com, let me just share this link. I'm going to share it in this file. So all your resources are going to be in this particular file here. So let me just go down. So next resources. So I'm just going to drop this, and I'm going to drop this here as well. Great. So this is where we will be taking most of our inspiration from, right? So as you can already see, I already searched for blog page, right? And blog page. So that should give you an idea what our main case study for this class is going to be. So at the end of this lesson, we are going to design a blog for women who code, right? And I believe Ofi is going to select the best design. Hopefully it's not mine. Whoever designs the best UI, their design will be used as the blog, which makes you already exceptional. And so we'll be designing a blog page. And in designing that, we're going to learn how to use various elements, how to structure the page, and think about how to basically use text, image, shapes, and all of those things to basically make our page or blog page more appealing for users. And so this is one page where we'll be looking for inspiration. This is another place where we'll be looking for inspiration. Dribble, it's very popular among designers. And so as you can see, there are various like blog examples that you can look at. This is so nice. This is so nice. We can do something like that. There is also this. This is so nice as well. And then there is Medium. So Medium is very popularly known. So we also take Medium as an example or as inspiration for us to design our blog as well. So yeah, that's where we'll be taking inspiration from. So feel free to go through this resource here, just revise what we discussed today, and look at the examples I shared with you, and then also spend some time in Figma just playing around with some of these things and just to get yourself acquainted with with the tool in general.